burning his arm in the sweat lodge and his experiences and friendship, by the way, with James Ray. So where does the prosecution go next? In session field producer Michael Christian has been in the courtroom every day. He and criminal defense attorney Dwane Cates are here to talk about what we can expect in the James Ray trial. Good to see you both, gentlemen. And Michael, let me start with you. What should we be expecting? We're dark today, but we got a full week of testimony coming up.
That's right, Ryan. You know, the prosecution has said that they're going to have 3 different groups of witnesses in this trial. The first group is the participants, people who were actually inside the sweat lodge, and that's what we're seeing now, and that will continue. After that, I believe we're going to get some medical testimony, what actually happened to these people who didn't make it. And then the third round of witnesses is going to be the investigation into what happened in this sweat lodge. So we're going to continue with the participants at this point. When we resume on Tuesday, we will have a woman named Lori Gennari. She was inside the sweat lodge. She was a participant in the Spiritual Warrior 2009 program.
All right, and Dwane, got to ask you this. We're seeing Lou Caty testify. I think one of the shocking things about his testimony, he's got a lot of interesting moments, but one of the shocking things is he burns his hand. He has this intense pain. The skin is hanging off, and he goes back in. He goes back in. So much of this trial about choice. Did people have the choice to decide whether to stay there? Did James Ray have this sort of effect on them that they felt they had to stay? How does that affect the prosecution's case?
Well, I think it kind of helps the prosecution's case, but you got to understand Lou Caty's kind of a different witness. He's been friends with James Ray for 20 years. He's been to numerous events with James Ray, and they're friends. And so, you know, I think he felt some sort of obligation to keep going with the event, even though he was injured. Okay, well,
Lou Caty, we talked about this. He seriously burned his hand on those hot rocks when he stumbled into that sweat lodge ceremony. But on redirect, Caty got emotional as he actually blamed James Ray for the death of Liz Newman. Look at this.
Did you believe it was your responsibility to take care of Liz?
Do I believe I should have said something? Yes. Is it my responsibility? No.
Were you there as a doctor to take care of other participants? Were you in charge of that ceremony?
No.
Who was in charge?
Mr. Ray.
Whose responsibility do you believe it was?
Sustained.
You know, such difficult testimony for Lou Caty. And Dwane, as I look at this was a man who heard Liz Newman breathing heavily. He said it was a breathing pattern that reminded him of the same kind of pattern when his father and brother died of cancer. You're talking about powerful testimony from someone. When you see this, how effective is this for the prosecution's case? And as you look at his testimony, is it in any way something that the defense is really going to have to fight?
Well, you know, I don't think the defense needs to fight this testimony. I think the defense needs to go with this testimony. I think at some point in this case, James Ray is going to have to step up and take responsibility for the deaths. I mean, let's look at it. I mean, he was in charge of the sweat lodge. He was in charge of what was going on. He was in charge of putting the water on the rocks. And I think he's going to have to step up and take some responsibility, at least, for the deaths in this case. Now, it's going to be up to the defense team at that point to explain to the jurors the difference between civil negligence, criminal negligence, and recklessness. And I think that if the defense does a good job of that, James Ray will become human. And because I don't think any of the jurors are sitting there thinking, you know, James Ray had nothing to do with this. So I think they need to take this head on and take some of the sting out of this testimony and the testimony that's going to come in the future.
Dwane, I got to ask you, when you say that James Ray needs to step up, does that mean that you think he might need to testify in this case?
Well, criminal defense attorneys don't like to put their clients on the stand. They really don't. But in this case, James Ray's a professional speaker. If James Ray can get on the stand and he can show emotion, he can show remorse, and he can take some responsibility, because I don't think anybody's thinking that James Ray has no responsibility in this case. So I think he needs to take the responsibility, but he also needs to temper that with the fact that he had absolutely no idea that people were going to die in this sweat lodge.
Okay. Here is the very interesting, another interesting part about Lou Caty in this case. Now, he may have blamed James Ray in court for what happened at the Sweat Lodge in 2009. But look at this. He made a comment. There's a comment he made about his positive experience at one of Ray's harmonic wealth seminars in 1998. Folks, you see that website right there? That's James Ray's website. That positive comment, it's still on the website. Michael, Christian, got to ask you, tell us about this seemingly complicated relationship between Lou Caty and James Ray.
You know, there's about 10 years difference in their ages, but they met 20-ish years ago. I think Lou Caty said he was 22 or 23 when they first met. They became friends. They went occasionally to have drinks together. They went to the gym together a couple of times. It's interesting, Ryan, you know, when you're in that courtroom, you see things that maybe the camera can't pick up. And there was one moment when Lou Caty, there was a break in his testimony. He left the courtroom. When the witnesses walk out, there's a defense table on one side and the prosecution table on the other side, and the witness literally has to walk between the two tables. And so whenever a witness does that, they're in pretty close proximity to the defendant here, James Ray. I did notice that as Lou Caty walked out, he smiled at the prosecutors, but he didn't really look at James Ray, and James Ray really didn't look at him. So whatever relationship they've had in the past doesn't seem to be as strong as it once was.
Wow, all right, all right. And Dwane, as I look at this case, I wonder, as you're looking at the testimony we've seen so far, there's been a lot of back and forth. I think the defense in some ways has been very effective on pushing back on this concept of choice. How do you see this trial as it is right now in terms of the participants, what they went through, and do you think the jury is siding more with the prosecution or seeing more of the side that they may have had a choice to be in that sweat lodge?
Well, and I think that a lot of the witnesses did testify that they did have choice in this matter. And I think that helps the defense. But all trials have ebbs and flows. You know, one day is good for the prosecution, one day is good for the defense. And Dr. Armstrong was just wonderful for the defense in this case. All
right, thank you so much, Dwane. Michael, we appreciate it. And folks, we're just moments away from an in-session special, Inside a Sweat Lodge. Christy Paul, Jane Velez Mitchell, and I will join Vinnie Politan to talk about our experience with the sacred Native American ritual. But first,